Maybe this thing got droopy. Hold on one. Yeah, this. Wow.
As much as I try and clamp down on this arm thing that I have on my microphone, it still just decides to move sometimes with no input from me.
Yeah. The non-droop mic stand. That's how we're going to get rich.
Yeah, man. It's build everything out of... Actually, probably build everything out of the exact same materials as everyone else and then just market it as non-droop.
We should brand it with Star Wars. Hey, welcome to a special episode of We Were Gamers, a podcast.
Yes.
An OG podcast. Michael's not with us today.
Yeah, we're just JJ and Andrew flying solo here.
Flyin Han. We made at least three Star Wars references.
That was a good joke.
There. We are all on vacation today. And so this is a fun catch-up pod to keep you guys in the content hashtag.
Yes.
I did put that in the wrong order. Not that it matters. But we want to talk some Star Wars.
Yeah. There's been a good amount of happenings in the Star Warses these past several weeks.
Mm-hmm. And we never did talk about The Last Jedi at all. Which I think kind of is really honestly my opinion on The Last Jedi.
Wow. Spoiler for Andrew's opinion on The Last Jedi later.
Episode over.
And cut. All right, great podcast. Glad we did this. Less than 3 minutes long.
Yay! Efficiency is key. Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely a bunch of news in the Star Wars universe. Is that the Star Wars universe has news in it?
Yeah, I think they call it the universe. I mean, they did reset it and all that, but I think it's still called the universe of Star Wars. You know what? Off the bat, we should say there's a lot of comics and a lot of books. And
we have read none of those.
Yeah, I read the mainline comic, which is okay. It feels like just sort of a bolt-on without much. It always has the feeling oh, we're treading on cool expanded universe knowledge territory. Oh, they pulled it back.
And they can't really do anything too cool because that stuff is all saved for the movies.
Well, yeah, so, in the old comics, you'd have the early adventures where Han and Boba Fett were, running into each other all the time. And,
right.
There's a lot of filling of gaps between movies that was happening. And these kind of, do that as well, but they also skirt the edges of making anything big happen. I know that's not true in the books, especially even the novelizations of the films have revelations in them about who people are and stuff like that. From either Rogue One novelization through the latest movies, they all have extra info in them. So maybe the books are where you go for that stuff now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did not know that. So, the novelizations of the movies sometimes say more about certain characters and stuff than just the regular movies do?
Yeah, so think about how they're produced is they get the long-form script, one of the earlier drafts, not the final draft, and not the final cut of the movie. And they have to get these books written and printed before the films are ready to release, because they release before the movies, I think, usually. Oh,
that does make sense, right? And then the movie gets edited 4 times and cut, and they do the thing that all movies do, where they cut out a bunch of scenes or reorder stuff or go back for reshoots or whatever. But the book doesn't get that chance because it's already either out or on its way to the printing press.
Right.
That makes sense.
So the classic example of this is in Rogue One, you at one point said that you wished that Galen, the scientist, had done more, more subvertive, had more story, and in the novelization he has it, right? Because that was in the film script, and they were like, "We don't have time for this."
Okay. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and based on what was the scuttlebutt that came out of Rogue One was that movie got very heavily edited.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of going back and kind of reordering scenes and rejiggering of the story and whatnot. So that makes sense that the book would then come out with something pretty different.
Yeah. So we'll be curious to see what happens with Han Solo, huh?
Yeah, man. Wow. There were a lot of things going on with that movie. I mean, the initial trailer, which came out during the Super Bowl, right? And then like less than a week later or something, they released a longer one.
The day later, they released one with sound.
Okay, it was literally the next one. Got it.
Yeah. This is the next day. They were like, hey, get hype. Go to YouTube. Give us views on the same thing with noise and extra Millennium Falcon and Han Solo.
Yeah. And, and the word out of, the Hollywood gossip on that movie is that it also has been somewhat troubled.
Yeah, they replaced the original director 3/4 of the way through filming it, I would say. It sounds like, with the timeline that they had, if they're actually releasing it this summer. Because I'm pretty sure that news happened in November or December or something like that. So
yeah, it definitely happened last year. So yeah, that's
not good news.
Yeah, man. And you wonder at this point, like, what kind of, because the people talk about the director of a movie, right, as always being the guy who with kind of the vision, right? Like the director is the one who has the, like, is supposed to have the overarching idea in their head and the vision for how they want the scenes to go and how things to work and look. But like, if you're 3/4 of the way through production, what kind of input does Ron Howard, who is the new director, right? What does he get? Like, what vision can he have that is other than, I want this movie to be done?
Well, if he were anyone else, I would say not as much as you might hope, but it's Ron Howard.
And if not to diminish Ron Howard at all, but like, you're essentially taking most of a work that someone else has already done, right? And of course,
right.
You can edit it and make all kinds of changes. And as we both know, editing does a lot of change. Can change a movie quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, you can come up with an entirely different film. It sounds like.
Yes.
And not only can it just change the course of a film, right? It can change the tone and context of a movie quite a bit. Just cutting out lines or cutting out people's backstories or making sure certain ones stay
totally
can always add or detract from a character. So that's another thing that a director can control is like, oh, well, I don't want Han to be this type of person, and he cuts out all his jokes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or like, I think, this scene came off in a bad way. What if I like change the lighting post-process to make it look darker over here, and it kind of gives sinister intentions to one side or the other? There's a lot of stuff you can do, after the fact to sort of give it the tone that you want. It's just, it's tough. You feel bad for the person who comes in 3/4 of the way through and they're like, please get this out the door.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he has enough control over this one to make it salvageable, and they give him another one as a thank you.
Yeah. I mean, and despite whatever we want to say about, them changing captains midship or whatever, that Rogue One had similarly sounded like at least some amount of trouble in, although I think theirs was more in the writing department maybe than the director. I don't think the director's left.
I think the director stayed on through it, and when they got through that first cut, a lot of people along the path, and I want to talk about one of them specifically, but a lot of people along the path saw that and they said, this doesn't work, does it? And I think one of the things there has never been confirmation on this that I can tell from someone in the know, especially not the actors. But what it sounded like is that possibly in the first cut they didn't all die. Spoiler.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's worth saying. We're probably going to spoil a bunch of Star Wars related stuff here in the rest of this podcast.
Yeah. Especially Last Jedi. We're going to have to talk about the ending.
Yeah, definitely. And I do agree with you, though. And the actors, of course, are not incentivized to ever make that kind of disclosure, right? They're not going to say, oh, man, yeah, the first cut of the movie, X character didn't die or whatever, because then people are going to label them as blabbermouths and not let them do, stuff that needs to be kept secret ever.
Yeah. But, yeah, along the way, it sounds like they kind of rejiggered that thing and then reshot it for story purposes. And one of the people that was on there that probably doesn't get much attention actually is a producer, and producers have some weight too. Executive producers are really just, unless your name is what's her name, now I'm having a mind blank, Catherine, who runs Lucasfilm now?
The head lady.
Kathleen Kennedy.
Yes, that's who it is.
Yeah.
Wait, is that? Yeah.
So Kathleen Kennedy gets an executive producer credit because she does an extreme amount of work. And then there are also executive producers like Steven Mnuchin who do no work and just hand over checks. So you have to kind of like dig into what people actually do in Hollywood when they get the title producer. There are other producers that are like head writers, right? Like, so there's producers that get everything done. There's producers that are writers, and there are producers that just write checks.
Yeah, so, and there are times where people are an executive producer on a film, but really they were just the guy who put up the money for the film, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Or they can be an executive producer, and they don't get title credit in, being a script supervisor and basically like an editor because they sat over the editor for re-editing the film. And
yeah, so that guy was actually over the shoulder of the writer the entire time, but you don't know.
Yeah, so there's no way really to know. But one that did do a lot of work is Alison Schirmer, and she's been a producer on I think all the Star Wars films, and I know she was a producer on Rogue One and helped turn that ship around.
All of the recent ones, you mean, or did she also work on the older ones
since Lucasfilm sold? And she was also going to be on Han Solo as a producer too. So. She actually passed away mid-production on Han Solo's film. So I don't know how that's going to affect things too. If you bring in Ron Howard, obviously it's horrible that she had a long-standing disease, it sounds like. So it may not have been unexpected for her family, but certainly it's kind of a shock to people like myself that follow the industry a little bit closer. And we're curious about people behind the scenes that are making things work, and then starting to learn about other people in there, and she's gone. Okay.
Yeah, and like anytime, you work at a company and, or with a small group of people and you lose like a semi-important member of the team, and I'm sure she was more than semi-important. Yeah. And it's tough to kind of reorient the team and get them back working together. Yeah. I even know that from the small business stuff that I have, and I can't imagine how much worse it is in film when the schedules are a lot tighter and things are way more hectic.
You don't have any superfluous people on a set.
Right, yeah.
Right. A lot of people get the opinion that like union people just sit around, it's not. That's not the way it works. Film is a hugely collaborative process, and if beforehand in offices and executives and studios, maybe you can make some arguments about overpayment and underwork.
And did you need like 15 of these producers at this point in this film?
Yeah,
right?
And people can talk about the greed of corporate production. The Fox level, standard offices. But once you get to a set, once you're fighting to make a film, it's a hugely collaborative process. Yeah. You're not gonna have extra people, right?
Like you need that guy standing over there holding that thing and that microphone. Those 3 camera guys are doing work all the time.
Sure. And every producer is working 2 phones at once.
Yeah, I believe it.
So, I hope, that they are able to do what they need to do, but I think it's going to be hard having lost an important member of the team, without having a replacement, really.
Yeah, you wish the best for her family, and just sort of hope that people can find their ways through.
Mm-hmm. That leaves us with what? Some new news about upcoming films. Also, that kind of is interesting. That I have wondering in the background in my head.
Yeah, at this point, are these films even actually upcoming, or is this just like rumors of upcoming films?
Yeah, good question. But they've announced at least 2 other trilogies.
God, there's already like the one trilogy that's going on seems like it has been going on for forever.
Right.
And they want to do like, I mean, of course they want to do more, right? Of course they would do that. But like, gosh, 2 more trilogies?
Well, we could talk about one easy and say yes or no, because there's really no news about it other than the fact that Weiss and Benioff from Game of Thrones are getting a trilogy.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that makes some sense. They were Game of Thrones was such a thing, and so became so popular and so big and such a cultural sensation or whatever. I don't know how much of that is due, to them versus the source material versus just the way HBO does things, but it seems like they have been pretty central to that show. So. Great, give them more stuff to do. It seems like their stuff with Game of Thrones is really good. So, yeah, going to movies makes sense, right? I mean, HBO is most of the way there at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, I think in terms of what they have to do to get through and produce on Game of Thrones at this point, it's kind of just making sure production finishes, right?
Yeah, I'm sure the last season or whatever is, occupies some of their time at this point, but they have to be largely, other than overseeing the day-to-day of the shoots or whatever, they have to be largely done in the, scripting aspect of the show, right?
I'm going to read you something. Just to give you, this isn't research. This was open already because I'm going to guess that you didn't really look into Weiss and Benioff before
Correct.
We did this as prep work.
Nope, didn't do that.
Okay, so the writing credits for both of them. Okay, Benioff, Troy screenplay. Then you got 1, 2, 3 films I've never heard of.
Okay,
X-Men Origins Wolverine. 1 episode of It's Always Sunny.
Good show.
Game of Thrones.
Huh.
Weiss. 1 episode of It's Always Sunny.
Was it the
Game
same
of
one?
Thrones.
Was it the same one?
Yep.
Okay. Well, maybe it's worth saying that together they're better than when they were apart.
I'm all for giving people a shot.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of how do they get Game of Thrones, first of all?
It's not a lot to go on. Yeah.
Without much to go on. And then how far into production are we going to get on a Star Wars movie that they have to write themselves?
Yeah. And what, who knows, man. The rumors are so early that who knows what even the trilogy would be about or when or when or where or whatever.
Don't be negative, Andrew.
Yeah, who knows, man? They could write. I'm sure they can write 3 movies. I give them the ability. Will the movies turn out good? Who knows, man? But circling back around, the writing credits, and HBO in general, I don't think there was a lot of before Game of Thrones came out, right? Sorry, I started 3 sentences and I haven't actually got through one of them.
That's pretty great. I love it. I'm just waiting for all to tie together.
Before Game of Thrones came out, right? I think people sort of my impression of what people in the industry thought of Game of Thrones, the story, was that this thing is way too big. No one can ever do this. This is 5 gigantic, or I guess probably at the time they were starting it, it was 4 gigantic books. and this story looks like it's going to go on forever. It's not even done. This writer is like not, versed in Hollywood or anything. Like, this is just like a death trap for some writer to get in here, and like it's going to get adapted and be impossible to shoot and impossible to. There's like 50 million characters and 500 places, and no one can do this, right?
None of them had read the book and realized you could cut out 3/4 of it.
Yeah, well, the later books for sure, and but I got that impression that people were like, "This is just not a thing that can be done on TV or movies. It's just too big. It's only something you can do in books," right?
Making those Lord of the Rings movies was a stretch Hollywood wasn't willing to make, really, and they had to do it out of desperation. And since then, there hasn't been much in the way of high fantasy with long novelization that has made it until Game of Thrones. I mean, that I can think of anyway.
Yeah, and so maybe, the skill then of the way that they brought those books to TV and the way they adapted them, right, is the thing that opened people's eyes and why Game of Thrones was so great, because people, they had a large group of fans who really loved those books and still do, but it wasn't open to the public the way HBO brings TV out, TV being more popular than books, I guess, is not that surprising, but not every show gets as popular as Game of Thrones has become, right?
Yeah, and you have to credit them with that. And I think also there's a chance that behind the scenes here, we're not privy to this, but I've noticed here and there, they seem to be dulling back in a lot of the old expanded universe. It's coming. If it's tweaked, it's tweaked. Solo had kids in the previous universe. Thrawn was in the previous universe. All these things that got wiped away when they bought and have slowly been reintroduced. So I would not
parts of it.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if the kernels of whatever trilogy they've been given are also like, hey, here's an old storyline we want to bring back, but bring it back a different way.
Yeah, and assuming that the people running Lucasfilm and Disney want Star Wars to continue to be a thing all the time, kind of the way Marvel has become, which I'm sure is exactly what they want, then they are going to have to develop more than their story has to continue beyond the trilogy of movies, right? So like, whatever movie comes after Last Jedi that stars Rey and Finn and all of them, like they can't like save the galaxy at the end of it, right? Because then there's no more Star Wars. So, it will be interesting to see how they sort of spin it out into the wider universe, because the way the current storyline is being told, it's kind of narrowly focused on a few characters, right? So, how do they expand that into a bigger universe? Or do they just do the side story stuff and tell stories all over in different parts and different times? Since this Solo movie, right, is set sort of back farther in the past, Rogue One was set earlier than the current set of movies. So, there's definitely options for them.
It's certainly a little bit more confusing of a place to be in, considering they have two trilogies that already span a large portion of time that they can throw stuff at, but it's unlike the Marvel movies. They're not all going in order.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they want to go back and make Clone War movies, it's going to be hard for people to understand, well, how does this fit with when Luke did the thing in The Last Jedi? It's like, wait, hold on. No, this is from before Luke was alive,
And I think that actually harmed Rogue One in the end. That part of it being like a prequel in some ways.
It's really too bad, because honestly, I love that movie a lot.
It was good. I really enjoyed it. The ending of Rogue One really nails it. I think in a way that really surprised me actually at the time. Say what you want about digital Princess Leia or whatever, but the ending of that movie was really strong.
Yeah, I love that you can play it back to back with the next movie.
Just like rolls right into New Hope, right?
Yeah.
And that's very cool. But I think when people heard this, it's like a side movie, it's not really necessary to go see it, and people were kind of like, oh, okay, maybe I'll just wait for The Last Jedi.
Well, the director of Rogue One did not get his own trilogy, Gareth Edwards. He was left out to dry for some reason, despite making a great film. But instead, you know who is getting another trilogy?
Who?
Rian Johnson, maker of The Last Jedi.
Okay.
Which, should I tip my hand here? Yeah, sure. Why not? I don't know why.
You don't know why we're giving it to him?
I literally watched The Last Jedi like everybody else, and I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. We'll get into that later. I get that some people liked it a lot, but I don't see like, oh well, he like changed the history of the Star Wars thing so much and so well that like he needs his own 3 movies.
Yeah, I don't.
Am I wrong?
I mean, I enjoyed The Last Jedi. I thought it was good, but I don't know that it was like masterful or anything. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's some, behind the scenes stuff going on here where they're like promising him this so that he doesn't like walk to a different studio or something. I don't know, man. It's confusing to me why they would choose him specifically.
Well, your theory is interesting because he was supposed to direct the next movie. He was supposed to take the last 2 ones. It was like J.J. Abrams starts the series, and then he gets the last 2 and knocks it down and finishes it off. Instead, now he moves, oh, hey, go do your own thing, and J.J. Abrams is back for the last movie. So maybe your conspiracy theory is correct.
I wonder if this is like, okay, we'll give you this trilogy to placate you from getting super pissed at us for taking the last movie away or something. I don't know. It's who knows, man. Like, but that is the second trilogy of movies, right? That are in theory out there.
Yeah.
Those are different movies than the ones that they're talking about doing with those Game of Thrones guys. So.
Right. And that's not even the unannounced side stories that they've, because I think that the one-off movies are still going to happen too.
Yeah, so, man, there's a lot of Star Wars coming down in the indeterminate future.
One a year at least. Although I said it when we were talking about the Solo trailer in a pod earlier this month, but I am very, very sad that Solo movie is not coming out on Christmas.
Yeah, it seemed like they had a good holiday cadence there, and I'm not sure why they wanted to move up to summer.
I don't know either. I'd have to look at maybe what the releases are for Christmas. Maybe they're concerned about Solo not having a strong showing against whatever else was coming out. But
yeah, maybe there's some big movies coming in Christmas that we're not thinking of.
I'm shocked, though. I mean, like a Star Wars movie at Christmas about with Disney ad budget, and they're worried about anybody else's film. That's weird.
It's unusual.
Either that's a bad sign, or it's somebody in charge got cold feet.
Yeah, I wonder if this is like Rogue One, where a lot of the executives kind of expected it to tank, and then it ends up doing good or okay, and they're like, "Oh, great." Yeah.
Yeah, the Rogue One did really, really well. I don't... so good.
Hollywood.
So good. All right. I think we have to get into Last Jedi now.
Yeah, so we kind of have been dancing around it here for a bit, so we could talk about The Last Jedi.
Rogue One is a better movie than The Last Jedi.
Yeah, sure. And I also think that Rogue One is a better movie than The Force Awakens. So I don't know that we're like coming across any scorching takes here at the start.
Okay, look, hold on. It's February something when we're on vacation. That movie came out probably 2 months ago by the time this pod comes out.
Over 2 months ago.
This is the slowest of takes. It is the vine-ripened late harvest take.
Late harvest takes. Absolutely. Yeah, the aged cheese of takes.
Uh-huh. This has been sitting in a cave multiple months making sure we got it right.
Yes. And, I think it's okay. I mean, it was good. There was a lot of backlash right after it came out. Would you say that is true, right?
There was a stable of people that were already tweeting they didn't like it as they sat in the film. Right? Like they had them prepped and ready to go in their inbox. They just were ready to send them.
It's like walking out of the theater, send a tweet. It's just like, okay, man. Like, it didn't inspire that much like fervor in me, even as I walked out of the film. I was like, oh, that was good.
I did not leave thinking it was good, but I didn't leave thinking like I had to tweet and write about it from a negative or positive space, right? I left Blade Runner wanting to write up some stuff about it, and I watched Mudbound, and I think I want to write some stuff about that too. And there are films that I leave, and I'm like, well, that was garbage. And there are films I leave, and I was like, whoa, mind-blowing, so good.
Right.
Gotta watch it again whenever it comes out on home video or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think I was most upset leaving a Star Wars film and just kind of feeling empty and not really feeling anything about it and just being like, I saw a big budget action movie that had no plot. And I'm like, for a film, spoilers, where we literally lose Luke Skywalker, I felt nothing.
Yeah. I would say that the lack of the emotional side, I think, is my biggest complaint with the movie overall. The moments, there's a couple moments in the film where you start to feel something for the characters, and then those characters are immediately killed very soon after. And you're like, really? Like, this was finally, you gave me a reason to like this character or to feel hopeful or whatever, and then you just like blow them all up.
I think that my main eye roll, and when I just like my brain turned off, was they had a moment there, and I understand like they need to sell more toys. They had a real moment to shock people at the end of the film and let Finn drive his thing into the little Death Star laser, and save everybody or whatever. Yeah. And instead they were like, not only did he just like not make it, but instead they had the girl they added this movie, and I apologize, I can't remember her name because obviously she's going to be in the next one, but she's that unimportant to me in terms of a character.
You mean she's obviously not going to be in the next one, right?
Which one?
The girl?
She lived, didn't she? She lived.
Did he rescue her out of that thing after it crashed? I thought she died.
That's what it's the most ridiculous part of it, is because he rescues her after. So she slams her little speeder into his speeder, and then they have the entire Imperial army bearing down on them, and she's dying in her spaceship, and he runs over and gives a speech about we save what we love, and then we carry, and now oh man, do you know how many people who are shipping Poe and Finn are mad right now?
All of them.
Yeah. And then he carries her to safety, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I didn't remember that he carried her to safety, because didn't she give him the little medallion she was wearing from her sister or whatever?
Oh, no, they used that to do the thing with the short circuit the door.
That was before. Yeah. You're right. Gosh,
short
it's
circuit
been a while
door
since I've seen the movie.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Anyway, short-circuited door to walk into an Imperial trap to then have the ship blow up around them. And while everyone else is falling into holes, they're riding an AT-AT around it, or ATST around, or
the top half of one, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or bottom half of one. Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm okay. There are ridiculous things that happen in sci-fi movies, but like so many in one movie.
The ridiculousness of the movie, actually. So I think all of my and maybe this was like sort of one of my bigger problems, was sort of the structure of how the movie unfolded. And I don't know how you fix this in terms of like, the only way to fix the problem I have here is to write a different script, right? And I don't know how they could have done that, because now we're talking about a completely different movie. Mm-hmm. But the idea that the whole central big thing that's happening is the rebels are running away from the Imperials, because ships move very slowly for long times is like so blatantly impossible in a world where they have hyperdrive that I can't even, like, I don't, how does that scene get set up and you expect me to believe it when I understand physics and how the ships work? And like, you spent all this time showing me these cool technologies and stuff. Like, why? Finn leaves, right? And they come back using hyperdrive. Why don't the Imperials do that? They can hyperdrive over somewhere else and then hyperdrive back in front of them.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason they couldn't have just done that.
Yeah.
We understand why they can't
Imperial
just jump past them.
Yeah.
But, like, you could have done the thing go around. There's like 700 ships. Like, send 2.
Yeah. Yeah, literally just put one ship right in front of them.
And that right there, once I realized this was the thing that they were going to draw out for, like, a large portion of the rest of this movie, I was like, oh, okay, this makes no sense. And I have given up on trying to understand what this movie is doing now, because it just pulled me so hard out of the realism of, like, whatever, or my suspension of disbelief, that, like, I just couldn't anymore.
I had the hardest time with, we're punishing our lead pilot by not telling him our plan in the midst of the place where we all need to know the plan.
Yeah, that was definitely
like,
that was like one of those things where, like, new leader has to put their foot down some way, and so this is how I'm going to do it, by shaming and kind of punishing this lead hotshot pilot guy, in service of producing a huge twist later in the movie.
Yeah.
And just like, gosh, I don't know. That problem could have been fixed, with some, maybe some reshoots or some rewriting or something. But the chase, quote unquote chase scene between the giant army and the rebel ships is just so dumb. It's such a bad idea. It's not how anything works. So, like, and then once you come to that conclusion, everything that happens after it is stupid. Like, why did they go down to the planet and all that stuff? They shouldn't have ever been there. And, like, the whole thing just falls apart once you don't like that premise.
Right. Yeah. And I think one of the main things I have, and one of the reasons the chase exists, and one of the reasons they go to the planet, is that I got the feeling, and this is one of the things that disappointed me most, is I got the feeling that the film was written with visuals first and then figured out later. So they knew they wanted another Hoth scene, like, because remember, we're remaking the whole first trilogy. So, like, we got to have a Hoth scene again with giant AT-ATs and speeders, but this time we have to make it more memorable, so the speeders are going to kick up red dust everywhere, and you saw that on the posters everywhere, right? Because it's the visual.
It's a very good visual scene.
Sure.
And actually, to lend credence to that theory, there was an interview done with the director shortly after the movie came out, talking about that initial scene in the beginning where they're sending the bombers out over the whatever that ship was.
Mm-hmm.
And the director specifically said, I had this idea in my mind of, like, the old World War II bombers flying over the carrier ships and dropping the bombs out from underneath, and I wanted to do that in Star Wars.
Except that he should have done that in a prequel movie, because it's been proven that, like, X-Wings and Y-Wings can take down a Star Destroyer.
And, like, disregarding that even, like, space doesn't work like that, dude. Like, you don't need to have bombers in space. You have missiles and torpedoes and like guided munitions with rockets on them. There's no reason to drop them out of the bottom of a ship that's flying over on top of the thing, except that you wanted it to look like that, and that's very cool.
Yep. And
then you get the produced drama for no reason of, like, oh, the bombers are being shot down, guys, we have to protect them, and it's the last one, and da-da-da. And it just feels very, like, overwrought for no reason, right? Like, There's no reason for them to have done this. They have these giant lasers and a bunch of other ships that are clearly much faster, and much more capable, and equally capable of dropping a few bombs. And I don't understand why they had to do it this way.
Yeah. You kind of each scene, you're like, why did they have to do it that way? Why did they have to do it that way? And I think that you kind of extends into some of the main characters and some of the like major plot choices. And I don't know that I can get behind, and I have a really hard time with the very clear motivation they have to remove anyone you know. So off camera and just randomly, without you even knowing he's there, when they blow up the bridge to that ship and everybody dies, you know, they tell you later, like, oh yeah, Admiral Akbar's dead.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, hold on. Like, we've known that guy for a long time. He's a fan, like, favorite, and you just like, yeah,
he's
whatever.
The one who told him it was a trap, man.
Yeah. But he's like there. He's like a huge piece of the Star Wars universe that we know is still alive. Oh no, he's dead. Everybody you know is dead. You must buy Finn and Rey toys.
Yeah, so I think that is actually not necessarily something that you're seeing a motivation and a desire coming from above the director's level. I think they are the studio as a whole is interested in moving on from Luke and Leia and Darth Vader and Chewie and Han to Rey and Finn and Poe and whomever else they decide to add as their little group.
I have a very sneaking suspicion that it was supposed to be this series was each movie we kill one of them, and then Rey and Finn and Poe get their own series.
Oh, that seems very likely, yeah.
Which is not how I believe the Skywalker saga should have played out. In the long run, like, this was supposed to be a self-contained thing, right? Like, at the end of it...
Was it, though? Like, I don't know. Or are they going to leave the door open at the end so that they can do more stuff, right?
Yeah. But it's, like, weird to think that they... It's weird to think that they, like, wrote a series at the end of another series to just start a different series and, like, have fans... Like, we're in the middle of a file transfer.
Yeah.
You know, like...
And the files that are being transferred here is the idea and the love of the universe of Star Wars from you and me to people younger than you and me, right? Like, you know, like your kids and the generation below us, or maybe even below them. I'm not sure how generations work, but like, it's something like that, right? The people that are supposed to really love all these new characters aren't you and I, really. Mm-hmm. Although we're supposed to like them as well. It's the younger kids who are going to buy those toys and, you know, bring the love of that universe forward into the future for the next 20 years. And
I want to be very clear. I'm fine with that. I think Daisy Ridley's a good actor. And
she's great, yeah.
And I really like her character of Rey. And I hope her backstory holds true, where she's just a random person, right? And like, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you just because this anecdote fits so well right there. I saw a concert by John Williams recently. It was wonderful, but you know, he gives a little spiel in between all of his songs, and one of the talks was before they played a piece from The Last Jedi. He said, you know, I got a call from the producer asking me if I wanted to do the music for this new movie. And he was like, well, is that girl from the first one in it? I really loved her. She was great. And she's like, yes, of course. And he's like, great, I'll do the second one. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay.
Continue
that fits perfectly. And I want to be clear about that because my daughter loves Rey. She's got Rey shirts and a Rey bobblehead, and like, she's going to be into it. And I would have been fine, like, letting the series get taken over by Rey or whatever. But the way that it's like kind of breaking down in terms of the, like, I don't understand why we're doing it this way every time. and the very clear ulterior motives, rather than saying, "Hey, fans, look, this Skywalker thing has to end.
The torch is being passed here." Yeah.
So we're gonna make these movies for you, but like, also realize that there's a new beginning coming. That story doesn't usually start with the new beginning and then like you pepper in the old stuff. I don't think. I think that it was rekindle the love of Star Wars in the people like me that are going to have kids and then be like, okay, cool. Those movies were really, really good. Guess what? My kids are going to watch the whole series when they're older, a little bit older, but also now I know that there's young stuff coming for them with like cartoons and, you know, like Rebels was around. She could watch Rebels in a year or two, you know?
So do you dislike the way that Luke's story ends then?
Oh, should we talk Luke and Leia now, I guess?
Well, I mean, we could talk them. Yeah. I wonder if anyway.
So
I want to hear your opinion.
Luke and Leia, I guess we have to do because it's the biggest part of the movies in terms of people complaining, I think.
Yes.
I think that Luke's fate has now been determined by the fact that Carrie Fisher passed away.
So you think that if Carrie Fisher had not died, Luke might have survived this movie?
I think that if Carrie Fisher had not died, we would not have Force Ghost Luke in the next movie. But now Carrie Fisher is going to have to be written out of the next movie. This is your production worry brain coming in.
This is
producer
the think ahead.
Producer me sitting down and going, well, we're going to have to write Carrie out of the next one because she didn't finish filming it.
And I suspect she was probably slated to die in that movie as well.
Dude, hold on.
But
just let that lay there. Duh.
Yes. No, that's why I'm saying, like, you know, but if she didn't shoot the scenes, you know.
She was slated to die. She's going to die earlier. And then instead of Rey becoming a Jedi by learning from Leia, Rey will have to now become a Jedi through Force Ghost Luke. Right? Which is really, really dumb considering all the conceits they made in this film about, like, Yoda telling Luke and everything that your pupils have to grow beyond you, and so Luke had to die for whatever stupid reason.
I don't think the way that he left was necessarily that bad.
No, I agree.
I don't know that I like the way they kind of just burned down all the Jedi lore in the film.
Oh, they're not. Much. It's not gone. It's in the Millennium Falcon, dude.
But I more meant the idea is that they were just like, yeah, all this like history of the ancient Jedi religion or whatever. Like, yeah, that's not really what's important. Like, screw all this stuff.
But remember, dude, we're not just symbolically burning it all down. The entire Star Wars universe is actually being burned all down.
Yeah, that part about it was what kind of rubbed me the wrong way about the story. It's like, okay, like, I get Yoda wants to make a point here. Force Ghost Yoda wants to make a point here to depressed Luke, who is acting like a 15-year-old. But, like, okay, I get he has to make a point here, but, like, this seems like a disrespectful way to the history of the universe to kind of do that, right?
I didn't mind it. Honestly, I really honestly did not mind it. I minded it later when he died. And I don't think he died in a bad way. I think that it's bad to say to him, remember, like, your job isn't to create more people that understand the Force like you. It's to create people that understand the Force better than you, like I did with you, right? And just like... because we're mirroring the entirety of the first series, just like that, well, remember, Yoda dies in that one, and so Luke has to die in this one. It's like, yeah, but we got the impression that Luke got trained by Yoda, and Rey...
Right, there was no impression of getting any training whatsoever. Rey did not
do anything with Luke. She and he had a discussion. She touched her friend through the Force and left.
Yeah.
Right, like... What is she growing beyond? He didn't teach her at all.
Well, maybe by his inaction, she has learned something, but it's not like she got a bunch of lessons out of that.
He literally says the word pupil, I'm almost certain. So, I don't know. It just doesn't give the impression that anything important happened between Luke and Rey at all. And that's when the feeling of just like malaise of emotion started to set over me in the movie.
Definitely.
Was like, what is he talking about? Unless Luke decides in the third movie to... Oh, no, he's dead. Never mind.
Yeah, he's not going to decide in the third movie to do anything because he's a Force ghost now.
Yeah, well, maybe now he's a Force... I've never seen a Force ghost train somebody in its entirety, but maybe that's going to be what's going to happen. I
also never seen a Force ghost call down lightning on a tree. We saw that in this movie, so... I mean, right? I mean, they can do whatever they want.
There is precedent in the comics for like Force ghosts possessing people and stuff like that. So, I'm not gonna say never. Like, a bunch of people were mad about we have cloak now and fuel and whatever. That's whatever they're doing.
Whatever.
And whatever they want to do with a Force ghost next movie is what they do with a Force ghost next movie.
I think the thing that was that when I saw it that really impressed me coming out, not impressed, the feeling I ended with was that going into it, Carrie Fisher had passed away, and they had said she had some part in the next movie, but no one was really sure how that was going to go or whatever. I kind of had expected more. I don't know, more things to happen with her character in this movie.
Yeah.
She was just being shepherded along by people the entire movie. She literally did nothing. She just ran from place to place.
Well, and then was in a bed for 3/4 of it.
Yeah. It's just nothing.
Yeah.
And so it feels like they just wasted her character the entire time. And now we don't get to have her character because she died.
Yeah. They got it backwards on what order to kill people in.
Yeah,
I know what they were trying to do. I can very clearly see what they were trying to do, and that is that Rey needed a mentor that was not Luke or Han, right? It's definitely very clear how they wanted to lay this out.
Like if the next movie, if everyone has stuck around, and then she didn't get the training she needed from Luke. Well,
they killed off the entire Rebel Alliance. So look, Leia only has Rey to train rather than worrying about a whole army anymore.
Right. Yeah. And so now the Leia and Rey training montage can exist for a while, where Leia hits her with a ruler or whatever, and but you wonder is that the stuff that didn't get shot, or what are they going to do with that now? Is it going to be Force Ghost Luke having a change of heart after he dies?
How do you feel that the whole Resistance army now fits on the Millennium Falcon?
Whatever.
I really feel like we didn't get the impression that many people died. We went from how many ships worth of people?
Yeah, right. 20 ships, 15 ships. I don't remember. They said it was
everyone
a lot.
Fits on the Millennium Falcon, and literally the only people that looked like fought in that battle were the people on the little speeders. Not well laid out.
Yep. It was, not great. But, I think even with that, they try to wiggle their way out of the these are the only Resistance people left, with no one is answering the call because they all know we're screwed, right?
Yeah.
And there are other people who want to fight, but they're not willing to, fly out here and try and save us.
Yeah. And that kind of leads you to the last scene in the movie, which again felt so emotionless and economy driven, which was, we're all eventually going to be the little kid standing at the end with his little broom he has the Force because he can move his broom, just like you, little kid that's watching this movie.
That actually was, I think, one of the dumbest things that they did in the whole movie. I understand why they did it in a crass and kind of here's a heartwarming ending kind of way, But actually, a lot of the scenes in the casino planet and that area I thought were just really dumb and pointless.
They're horrifyingly bad. You're literally talking about child slave labor, and they're running through the place on like, isn't this a funny pod race on my little animal that I forget the name of? This has 4 ears. Ha ha. Benicio del Toro's a funny guy. Like...
Kind of.
Like, hold on. We're just glossing over the fact that this is like a glutton planet full of weapon dealers that's run on child slave labor. We're just like papering over that one.
And like, it's just that I don't mind that they had to have Finn go on a pointless quest, right? Like the idea that he goes on this quest to find the master code breaker and then it turns out to actually have all been a giant waste of time is not actually the problem that I have with the storyline, right? Because that provides the impetus for Finn to decide to actually commit to the rebellion as opposed to just like being there because that's where he is at the moment.
But they take his commitment and they neuter it. Like, I'm committed again. Okay, now we went through this battle and now I have a chance to save the... Oh, no, never mind. I don't save the Alliance.
Well, no. At the end, right? Like, after things have already gone sideways... it gives him that line where he can say like, "Oh, I'm rebel scum," as opposed to just being scum, right?
Yeah,
he wasn't committed to the cause before, and then he actually is.
I get it, and then even later in the film, they take that and they have that moment that they can shock people and use that commitment and like change the course of the story and make it a battle where you understand why the entire rebellion has gotten down to like 20 people. Because they don't have their Death Star laser and they have to fight their way in and it's a huge bloody thing. Oh, no. We must save the things we love and crash our ships together and not save the Alliance by crashing into the Death Star laser.
I mean, I don't feel that bad about that one because in the end, right, like so he blows that laser up. There's still 50 million ships up there. They could just fly down either another one or like just blow up the mountain from orbit. Like, they weren't getting out of it, man.
I agree. I don't.
So, like, it's...
Look, we talked about earlier, they wrote themselves into this, and now...
Yes, they absolutely wrote themselves into this corner, and they had to get out of it, and this was their decision.
Yeah.
But, the problem I have with Finn's arc is not that he had that arc. I don't think that the way the character changed was fine. I think that the stuff they had him do along the way was kind of stupid. And the whole casino planet was a cool idea, and then they tried to like layer in a bunch of stuff in there that had no business being in a Star Wars movie, or no business being in a Star Wars movie about something else. It's like, oh, well, let's make like a casino planet run on child labor in the middle of this Star Wars movie about other stuff and the rebels and the Imperials and stuff going on over somewhere completely else. Like that was not the planet to go to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh well, yeah. Do we care that Leia survived in space?
No,
I don't either.
That part completely did not bother me. It was like the stuff that we all knew that yes, she actually had force powers and stuff. Like, yeah. I mean, I've read those X-wing books, and all those X-wing pilots have little force shields so that they survive in space when they eject. So, you're telling me General Organa didn't have one, you know? Yeah, whatever. Like, that part completely did not bother me. Like, it's the kind of thing that you would do for a main character, right? Like, oh, if it had been Poe in that room instead, they would have found some cockamamie scheme to save him also, right? Like, sure. So it did not bother me at all. Yeah, it doesn't bother me because she has force and because she would have one of those things, but like, well, you know, it's hard to get there, and like the like bait and switch, like, oh, she's dead because we said everybody on the bridge is dead. Like, why bother? Yeah. I agree that it is like an attempt to manufacture, the script is attempting to manufacture sympathy and cause drama between the other characters here because they can't have the person who actually knows what's going on awake to tell them, right? Yeah. So I don't know. The movie has a lot of problems rooted in the script and the way it was decided like the way they decided things were going to go. And I don't know that they could have come up with a better movie using this script, right?
Yeah.
And once you, like, by the time the shooting and stuff is going on, it's already way too late to make those kinds of, like, the kind of structural big changes that they would need to make this movie better, in my view.
Especially given the way this one was laid out. I don't see how you rearrange anything.
Yeah. You can't, like, reorder these scenes differently somehow and explain it away, to make this movie better. You would have need to have done something different. Yeah. And at that point, it's a different movie. Yep. And who knows?
All right. I feel like we're kind of on the same page.
Yeah. I didn't, to be clear, we talked a lot about the problems of this movie, but I didn't dislike it. I enjoyed my time watching it. There was a lot of stuff that blew up pretty good, and that was cool.
I had moments that I enjoyed, but overall, I kind of felt a general ennui as I got further into the film.
Mm-hmm. I definitely didn't leave going like, yeah, awesome. But I didn't leave going like, this was awful. I left with like, yeah, that was all right. It was pretty good.
I left more muted than you, but I didn't leave, like I said, firing off furious tweets about how I was betrayed by Disney.
Yeah, man, that corporation was never your friend to betray you to start with.
All right. I think that wraps it up for us. We'll be back from vacation next week. And until then, JJ, how do you think the next Star Wars movie is going to go?
Meh.